Albert Breer is on Zoom. You want to just pop him in, even though we're not on the radio just yet? You there, Albert? Albert, you there?
I'm here.
Very
I'm here.
good.
You got me.
Do you want to ask Albert Breer the poll question that's out
So,
there?
Albert, somebody called in about there was some leftover smoothie bowl in his apartment building, and it had been there for 4 hours.
In the lobby.
In the lobby. It wasn't his, and so he wondered if he should take it. Would you? So I put this out as a poll. Would you take a food delivery that's been sitting in your apartment lobby for several hours, even though it's not yours?
No. Like, why would, like, it seems like kind of a weird move, don't you think?
If there's a pizza and it's been sitting in your lobby for 4 hours.
Do you mean like take it to eat it or take it to throw it away?
Take it to eat it.
So you consume it.
Yeah, take it to eat it.
Eat it.
By the way, what an interesting twist right there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like, because I don't know if you're talking about doing a courtesy for the rest of the building by taking it to throw it away, because it could start to like go rotten or something like that. I guess it depends on what sort of food it is.
You get home at like 10 o'clock,
right?
you're kind of hungry, you see this box of delivery, and you're like, wow, this has been here since 6. Nobody's claimed this?
I mean,
I'm taking it.
Order your own pizza.
Okay. What if the pizza was what if it was the Harbaughs who ordered it? What would you do then, Cameron?
No, I'm good with the Harbaughs. They're all in the NFL now, so we're all good.
Very good. See, we're page turning, aren't we? We've turned pages. It's so much better with Jim in the NFL, isn't it? It's so great.
I mean, for me, yeah, not for you.
No. Please, for me too. It's a delight. I mean,
he is. I mean, like,
he's the best.
He is so different. Like, he's the same guy at his core, but like his like willingness to let everybody in now.
Oh, it's great.
Some of the Chargers content, like I don't know if you watch like the extended like version of the RV thing.
Yes,
with him and Greg Roman.
Yeah,
it was like a 10-minute thing. It was incredible. It was freaking amazing.
Well, if you saw, by the way, Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'm back on the Rich Eisen Show radio network, sitting at the Rich Eisen Show desk, furnished by Grainger with supplies and solutions for every industry. Grainger has the right product for you. Call, click Grainger.com or just stop by. I don't know if you saw, but Harbaugh said, that Jim Harbaugh said that the Chargers had an advantage because of how hard they've worked out in the offseason. I don't know if that's a reference to the strength coach that he brought from Michigan or what have you, but it's just great to just see him talking and representing the Chargers. That to me, they're going to have a fullback, and I don't even know what the hell they're going to look like. I mean, you have any sense of what the Los Angeles Chargers are going to look like when they kick off against the Raiders, a great Week 1 game later this fall?
I think they're going to look a lot like all of Jim Harbaugh's teams. And I think I've used this line with you before, and I know you're buddies with Joel Klatt as well. And, I'll steal the line I heard Joel use a couple times, which was, and he may have used it on your show, I'm not sure. But, people have gotten really obsessed with making Justin Herbert better on 2nd 11, and Jim Harbaugh is going to get him in 2nd and 5,
Right.
And, I just think there's such – I don't know if there's any other coach, at least in my time covering the league, where – what he does is so identifiable and so transferable and has gone everywhere he's gone with him. And from Stanford to San Francisco to Michigan, and now presumably to the Chargers, it has looked the same. And it is an ability to run the ball. It's a certain dominance at the line of scrimmage. It's having stars on the lines of scrimmage, your tackles, your edge rushers, your interior guys. It's having smart players everywhere. It's making your quarterback better by asking less of him. I think that's really what it is. And that, I think the tendency a lot of times with young quarterbacks is once they show promise, it's like, okay, like let's put more on their shoulders and let's ask more of them. And I think that's where sometimes these things fail. Where what I think the genius of what Jim Harbaugh does is he's asking less of the quarterback. He's showing the quarterback, you got a team around you, and we're going to support you, and we're not going to put the world on your shoulders, and we're going to incrementally ask a little more of you, but we're not going to do it all at once, And, so I think what we'll see from Jim Harbaugh is something that looks a lot like what we saw at Michigan, a lot like what we saw at San Francisco, a lot like what we saw at Stanford. And, I think the cool thing about it, again, is that he's kind of letting us into his world a little bit more than he used to, which I had actually heard, and I'm sure you heard this too, Rich, like when they had the disastrous COVID season in 2020, and he brought in all the young assistants and, the Ravens staff to go get Mike McDonald. One of the things I remember hearing back then was that, like, a lot of like the people that came into the Michigan building then got him to lighten up a little bit and got him to, I think kind of let people in a little bit more. And, maybe we're all the beneficiaries of it now and getting to see a lot of what the Chargers are doing as it's happening.
Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. And, the fact that I'm sitting here and asking, what are the Jim Harbaugh Chargers going to look like, I think is based on the fact of the moves that were made in the first few weeks of his arrival there,
right,
based on the cap realities of the team that he inherited. I think when he took the gig, general sense was, yes, there's going to be some harsh realities cap-wise that are coming and things of that nature. But I think the general sense was, I can't wait to see what Jim looks like with the Charger team that we've seen the last couple of years, as opposed to the reconfiguration of it.
Yeah.
So that's my wind up for this question.
Yeah.
Which is the team that you've heard from your sources and people and just chit-chatting and just talking ball as you do all the time, which is the team that there's a consensus that, man, they hit every button properly? From either they changed their coaches or they changed their roster or they reconfigured this or made that, like, which team has hit on every cylinder in the mind's eye of everybody, and that team can make some hay this fall?
This offseason, you're saying?
Yes,
like,
sir.
just specifically, like, boiling it down to this offseason, I would give you the Texans. I just think it's having everything at in a spot where you can aggressively take advantage of the window that you're in when you have your quarterback on a rookie contract and your quarterback's playing at a really high level. We don't need to go over what CJ looked like last year. Everybody saw that. I just like look at some of the moves they've made, both internally and externally, that really set them up. Signing Nico Collins long term, like now CJ Stroud knows he's got Nico with him and Tank Dell with him for the next few years. And then you go outside the organization and you see some of the things that they were able to do. Like the ability to go in and say, okay, we're going to bring in a Stephon Diggs, a guy who's had experience being a number one guy, right? And we're going to go in and we're going to bring in a Danielle Hunter as we lose Jonathan Grenard. And Jonathan Grenard was a really good player, but Danielle Hunter's been a number one. And I think there was a subtlety to that a lot of football people noticed, right? Which is you're bringing in guys who have experience being the guy. Even Joe Mixon, coming from Cincinnati. Like, those guys have had the pressure and the attention of being the number one guy before, right? So, like, what is Nico Collins and Tank Dell going to get from Stephon Diggs? They're going to get to see a guy who's been the number one guy, and it's going to take some pressure off of them. Same thing with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, right? Like on the defensive line. And so, I just think the Texans have sort of set themselves up where they're able to take advantage of the next 2 to 3 years. And obviously the realities change as you pay your quarterback and everything else, but they're in that window, where for the next 2 or 3 years, they're going to be able to build really aggressively. And they took full advantage of being in that window in the way they handled the offseason.
We're also in that portion of the non-playing season where contracts get done and place, and then obviously have ripple effects throughout the entire league. And Justin Jefferson's contract clearly is that. And I want to talk about two teams that places now right in the middle of this pond of the ripple effect. And one is the Dallas Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb. What is going on there? Why aren't the Cowboys more active in getting something done right away instead of letting the market reset itself multiple times over, from A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown to now Justin Jefferson?
Doesn't make any sense, right?
No.
Like, and it's not just CeeDee either, by the way, Rich. It's also Micah Parsons, because Justin Jefferson didn't just reset the receiver market; he reset the market for non-quarterbacks and beating out Nick Bosa and getting to 35 million where Nick was at 34. Now Micah Parsons' ask is going to be to leapfrog Justin Jefferson, which, if you're Micah Parsons now, do you ask for 40 million per? I think you'd be well within your rights to do that. And CeeDee Lamb, like, may not be the receiver Justin Jefferson is, but he had a borderline historic year last year. What was it, 135 catches and 1,700 yards? Just insane, right?
Well, he definitely
So,
has ability to stake claim to saying he should beat Justin Jefferson's contract, Albert. He definitely
yeah,
has that.
you could say that. Yeah, I mean, like
No doubt.
he hasn't had the consistent, like, like he hasn't done it 4 years in a row the way Justin Jefferson's like sort of in a class by himself as
Yes.
far as how he's produced over the first 4 years. But yeah, I mean, where CeeDee Lamb is right now and where he was last year, certainly you could say he's in that class. And so, now you're talking about an outlay of what, like 70, 75 million per year between the two of those guys, and you haven't even gotten to the fact that your quarterback's in a contract year. And you connect that to the comment that Jerry Jones made at the start of the offseason, all in. This is an amazing fact. I was trying to kind of, because nobody would argue the Cowboys have been a bad franchise for the last 15 years, right? Nobody would argue that. So I sort of thought through this over the last 2 days, and I want to look something up that kind of would encapsulate it. This is an amazing fact that I was able to figure out, right? So since 2007, right, which is when was Wade Phillips' first year in Dallas, the Cowboys are number 6 in wins in the NFL. Okay. They're ahead of the Eagles, they're ahead of the Chiefs, they're ahead of like some big time teams, right? So over the last that's 17 seasons, they are 6th in the NFL in wins. And they have the 4th longest conference championship game drought. And the only teams that have longer droughts than them, that haven't been in the conference championship game in a longer period of time, the NFL's Final Four, are the Dolphins, Commanders, and Lions. Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, think about that. You have the 6th most wins, yet you have the 4th longest drought not having been in the Final Four. So what does that tell you about where they are? They've been close. They've had teams that can compete on that level, but are they striking when the iron's hot? And they ran into this with Zach Martin, where they had to pay him, they had to pay a tax on him because they waited on him. And they ran into this with DeMarcus Lawrence. And certainly the last time around, they ran into this with Dak Prescott. And I just can't wrap my head around why they aren't, why they haven't been more aggressive with these teams, especially when there's a team right there in their division. And we've talked about this, Rich, with the Eagles, how the Eagles have gotten ahead consistently of the market on so many players, and they've been able to keep teams together as a result of it. So I don't know what's going to happen with CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons over the next 2 or 3 months, and Dak Prescott past that. But I certainly know, like, the ship sailed now as far as being aggressive. Like, because that market has shifted, and Justin Jefferson getting paid was sort of the big piece. And you wait a little bit longer, than Jamar Chase is going to get paid, and you don't think Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson are cahoots on the contract situation, then you don't know their relationship. Jamar Chase probably gets 36, 37 million a year.
That was my other
So,
team to mention to you, is how does this affect the Bengals with T. Higgins sitting there on a franchise tag saying,
yeah.
I want out. And Jamar Chase is first in line to get paid there, with all due respect to T. Higgins, who can probably sit here and say, hey, you send me to another team and I'm getting in the neighborhood of at least what what Waddle's making and what
right.
Devontae
Least,
Smith is asking for. Like, he can get in that neighborhood, but the Bengals do have that hammer of being able to say, hey, I've got you on a franchise tag. Let me deal with Jamar Chase. Let's all win a Super Bowl this year.
So I think, so at the beginning of the offseason, Rich, like I think we all had like a T. Higgins trade on our radar, right? Like the same way we had like maybe an Aiyuk trade on our radar. Like, that, just one of those things where you look at the way the team's set up and you're like, okay, like maybe this is at least going to elicit some phone calls from some teams to the Bengals to see if they can pry T. Higgins free. And right around the combine, I talked to somebody pretty high up in Cincinnati who basically made the point to me, no, we're going for it this year.
Yeah.
Like, we are really all in on trying to win a Super Bowl this year. And we're going to do what it takes. We're going to do everything we need to do to try to win a Super Bowl. And we want T. Higgins to be a part of that. He's an important part of it, right? Like, I think they probably feel the same way about Trey Hendrickson, who, rattled cages about his contract, a few weeks back because of where the edge rusher market has gone. So, I think the road here for them is that it'd be really, really difficult to have Burrow and Chase and Higgins together, right? Like, for the next 5 years. That would probably cost you, if you add all of it up, what? like $110 million at least, maybe more than that, maybe $120 million per year to have all three of those guys who all play in one phase of the game together. So if the reality is that, you're going to be leaning on guys like Jermaine Burton, their third round pick coming up to replace Higgins, and you're going to want to try to re-sign Chase, I think, the move right now would be, what can we do to make T. Higgins happy this year? And can we put a sweetener in his contract? Is there something that we can do to make him whole this year? And, I think that's probably the route they go. And I think that maybe you do that before you sign Chase. And you say, okay, like we're going to give T. Higgins something that's going to entice him to come in and be all in with us for this year. And maybe it means you promise you don't franchise him this year in 2025, right? Maybe that's what it takes. But you do something to get him in, and then you sign Chase. And now you've got kind of full Voltron on that side of the ball. But it's a tricky situation, certainly. And I do think, like, ultimately, the end result of all of this is that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are together long term, and T. Higgins is probably somewhere else in 2025.
Right. But if you can try and, as you say, full Voltron, go into the season one last time, with Higgins and Chase and Burrow, you can. Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. And that does bring me to the 49ers and what their situation is with Aiyuk now that Jefferson's been paid and these other ones are out there, as we mentioned, with Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb and what Brandon Aiyuk is looking for. And, you hear, that's why it made no sense. Let's trade Aiyuk before the draft. You got Debo here, and if Aiyuk goes and makes a big deal, then maybe Debo goes. Like, why wouldn't the Niners go full Voltron with the kid they drafted out of Florida in the first round and say, let's try and win one currently right now, knowing that this is the last season they're probably going to have Purdy on the deal that they have him on, or that day is coming. So why would the Niners trade anybody between now and the season?
I do think they've done such a good job drafting and developing. They've been dealing with over the last 5 years or so, like this just bottleneck of contracts at the top of their books, right? Like, so it's, I think, sort of similar to what they were facing. I think it was 4 years ago now, where they had DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead, who brought a lot of the same things to the table. Were both excellent players, and they viewed Eric Armstead as being more signable, right? Like, so they do a long-term deal for Eric Armstead, and as much as they hated to do it because he's a great player, they trade DeForest Buckner, who is a captain for them, who does all the right things, because they could get value back for him. So I think that's sort of the way they view this. I think, given their druthers, this is just me talking.
Yep.
I think they would keep Brandon Aiyuk over Deebo Samuel. And I think it's because Brandon Aiyuk is more of a traditional number one receiver who can beat man coverage, who you can build an offense around. Deebo Samuel is great. He can do a million different things, right? But at this point, is he a little bit more of a luxury? And I wouldn't ignore getting Christian McCaffrey out of the way too, getting that taken care of, because that was hovering over them. Not a lot of people know this, but that's been hovering over them for months now. Like the McCaffrey, based on where pay for skill players has gone, wanted a little bump. He's got his, that's taken care of now. So I think they try like hell to re-sign Brandon Aiyuk in the coming weeks and see if they can find some sort of middle ground. And obviously the price tag on that has gone up, and Brandon Aiyuk is going to benefit from having waited. And if they can get something done, great. Then I think they get some phone calls on Debo. And if the phone calls come in on Debo, there's something they really love out there, fine. If not, they wait a year and trade him after the year. I don't think both those guys are going to be on the team long term. But I do think that their futures with the Niners are relative to one another, and really kind of center on the way the Aiyuk contract negotiation goes. But I do think that, like, if it were up to Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, ideally, I think they'd like to have Aiyuk on their roster long term. And if that means trading Debo, then I think that they'd be okay with that.
Even in the season, right? I mean, unless Debo makes
I
it
don't know about
uncomfortable. Like, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, go for it this year. Like, why would you break up any of your top
I think it depends on what
like
you can
that?
get for him, though.
If you can
right?
figure it into the cap, really? I mean,
I think it does depend on what you can get for him, though. Like, if somebody's offering a first round pick for him, Now you're talking about something a little bit different, right? Like if the Jets were to offer a first round pick for Debo, who obviously knows Robert Saleh, um, would you and that is the Jets going all in on it. Like if you're the Niners, you look at it and say, okay, like, well, we've got Ricky Pearsall here. We have Juwan Jennings coming back. He's signed
He
through
was terrific.
2025.
He could have been the MVP of the Super Bowl.
Right, and who has a chance to be a good player, and I think that was a savvy move by the Niners to hold on to him.
Right.
And now you have Aiyuk as a true number one, and oh, by the way, you got to factor George Kittle in this equation. I know he's gotten older, but he's still a really good player, and Travis Kelce has shown us how tight ends can last. I just I think that there is a scenario where somebody could pry Debo Samuel from the Niners. Again, that's just my opinion.
Sure.
But if somebody comes along and offers a first round pick and you're the Niners, right? And again, you're dealing with this perpetual bottleneck of contracts that's only going to get worse after Brock Purdy gets paid. And you're getting offered a first round pick. Part of the equation has to be that means we can get a really good player on our roster at cost control, for 4 or 5 years. And that'll help us manage the numbers at the top of our cap sheet. So I think it's a complex situation that I think could go a number of different ways. And certainly if I'm a team like the Jets and I see Brandon Aiyuk has been re-signed to a contract at whatever $30 million per year, I'm probably picking up the phone and calling John Lynch.
Last one for you, Albert Breer. I'd like you to interpret this exchange between Tua Tagovailoa and reporters trying to help Tua discover the proper adjective to term his mental state and also feelings towards his contract negotiations. This happened on Tuesday.
Frustrated where things stand right now?
Not frustrated. I'm another word, but yeah.
Agitated, annoyed, bothered.
How about that pause? Just wanted to get something done. That's it. Just wanted to get something done.
What was your reaction to seeing Jalen? Or go ahead, Al.
Concerned? Is that?
Not concerned. Concerned's not the right word. That's way off from the word.
Nancy, maybe?
Probably antsy. Yeah.
We're doing this.
I wouldn't say pissed off. I mean, this is the nature of the beast, right? This is how it goes.
Searching for the adjective, we came up with the phrase "the Tuathaurus," trying to find the right word in the Tuathaurus. What's your interpretation of that, Albert?
My interpretation is it's a guy who's been through a lot. And if, we're going to have some empathy for him, we got to remember where he was. What was it, a year and a half ago, and then going through the concussion things. And then you go back and you look at the way his college career ended with a major, major hip injury. The kid has been through a lot to get here, and whether they want to admit it or not, for every NFL player, for every guy who's drafted in the first round, the holy grail is that second contract. And Tua's been eligible for over a year now. And, if you were him and you put yourself in his shoes, and again, thinking with some empathy here, and you see Jared Goff get paid and you see Kirk Cousins get what he got, you're probably thinking to yourself, like, I've done enough to warrant this organization going all in on me. And, where is that number? Like, that's, a fair question to ask. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're him, you're probably a little antsy because of everything you've been through. And you're probably a little antsy because you want the peace of mind and you want to be able to buckle your chin strap and go into practice and be all in with the group that you've built with, because they've had a promising first 2 years under Mike McDaniel and he's got a good group around him and they're only going to get so many more shots at it. So you can see where there'd be a lot. I think the best way to put it is there'd be a lot going through to his head right now. And, as he seeks again, that peace of mind that every player would like to have going into the summer.
I guess is it fair to interpret the Dolphins want the number to start annually with a 4 and he wants a 5? Is that where we're at, or what is it?
Yeah, I think his camp has been looking for a number starting with a 5 for a while, and whether or not they get there, we'll see. I can say with some authority that he has the same agency as Daniel Jones. And I just tell you, like, when they did the DJ deal, I know there was some feeling with some people over there that even then, and that was before he had the great year he had last year, right? Like that Tua was going to be in line to get something in the 50s. And so, we'll see if he gets there or not.
Albert, thanks for the time, brother. We'll chat with you soon.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Rich.
That's Albert Breer, at Albert Breer, getting ready to watch the Celtics locally, try and bring the title there.
I got to work on my tan some, too. We
got
some work to do.
Get on out there, Albert. Get on out there. Stop staying indoors. That's Albert Breer here on The Rich Eisen Show. Okay. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.